Welcome to The Explainer. If you ever walked around your city and wondered who really decides what gets built, what gets torn down, and what your neighborhood looks like? Today, we're going to dig into that, using Denver, Colorado as our guide to uncover the hidden forces of history, money, and power that shape pretty much every city. Let's get into it.
So this all started with a comment I saw online, responding to an old photo of Denver. It just said, "Look at what they took from you." And wow, that's a powerful statement, right? It cuts right to the heart of the matter. As a city grows, who wins, who loses, and what do we leave behind in the name of progress?
To really wrap our heads around Denver today, we have to go back and see what it used to be. And honestly, the changes, it's just staggering.
I mean, just look at the density here. This is Denver before the first zoning laws were passed back in 1925. It was a city of these really vibrant, mixed-use neighborhoods, packed with incredible Victorian buildings. But so much of this was just bulldozed, all under the banner of urban renewal. And that's a phrase that, more often than not, really just meant trading these unique communities for parking lots and massive highways that sliced right through the city's heart.
Now you have to understand, this didn't just happen by accident. This whole transformation was the result of very deliberate policies, designs that had deep, lasting consequences that were baked into the city's divided past.
One of the most powerful and destructive tools used to do this was a practice called redlining. For decades, the government and banks would literally draw red lines on maps around minority neighborhoods. And if you lived inside that line, forget about getting a loan to buy a home or even to fix up the one you owned. It was basically impossible. This systematically locked Black, Latino, and other minority families out of what has been the single biggest way to build generational wealth in America.
And this segregation wasn't just abstract lines on a map, it was a painful, humiliating part of daily life. Marie Greenwood, who later became Colorado's first Black teacher, remembered that Black residents were only allowed to use the public pool on certain days. And after they were done swimming, the city drained the entire pool and cleaned it for the white residents. It's just a brutal, personal example of how systemic racism was woven into the very fabric of the city.
You can see on this timeline how all these decisions just stacked on top of each other over the decades. It starts with zoning in the 20s. Then, even after the Supreme Court outlawed racist housing contracts in 1948, the practices just found new ways to continue. And then bam, in the 60s, the construction of Interstate 70 literally carved North Denver in two, displacing hundreds of families and walling off a predominantly Latino community behind a barrier of concrete and pollution.
Okay, so that's the history. That's the foundation of how we got here. But how are these kinds of huge decisions influenced today? Well, I don't think you'll be too surprised to hear that a huge part of the answer comes down to money and access. $36.4 million. That is the record-breaking amount of money that businesses and other groups spent on lobbying in Colorado in just 1 year back in 2019. Now, that's not just some random number, it's a direct, calculated investment in shaping the rules that all of us have to live by.
So who's spending all that cash? Well, take a look. It's the major industries you'd probably expect, from energy giants like Excel to oil and gas to the cannabis industry. They're all spending big money to influence laws on everything from carbon emissions and drilling regulations to the minimum wage, anything that affects their bottom line. And it's not just happening at the state level. The city itself has its own rule book, and it's massively important. The Denver City Charter is basically the city's constitution. It lays out everything: how power works, how elections are paid for, and really critically, how regular citizens can make their voices heard. But listen, it's not all about big money. It can feel that way sometimes, but cities also have systems that are specifically designed to put power back into the hands of ordinary people. Let's look at a couple of really key examples in Denver.
First, you've got something called the Denver Fair Elections Fund. This whole thing was created to try and level the playing field against big money donors. So candidates who join have to agree to take smaller donations and say no thanks to money from big political action committees, or PACs. But the real secret sauce, the thing that makes it all work, is the 9-to-1 match.
Let me show you how powerful this is. Let's say you donate $50 to a traditional campaign. That campaign gets, well, $50. But if you're a Denver resident and you give that same $50 to a candidate in a fair elections fund, the city matches it with $450 in public funds. Your $50 donation instantly becomes $500. It's all about amplifying the voice of the average person, giving grassroots candidates a real shot.
And for making even bigger, more fundamental changes, there's a direct path for citizens to actually amend the city charter itself, to change the city's constitution. It's a whole process, of course.
You have to draft the change, get it reviewed, and then go out and collect thousands of signatures. But if you pull it off, your idea goes right on the ballot for the whole city to vote on.
So, when you put all these pieces together, the deep history, the powerful money, and the city's own rules, what's the final picture look like? Who really holds the power to shape a place like Denver?
Well, it's pretty clear that our cities are shaped by this constant tug-of-war. You've got the long shadow of history, where past decisions are still fueling inequality today. You've got money, which absolutely amplifies the voices of the powerful. But, and this is so important, the rules of the game also give regular people official pathways to fight back. And just understanding how those pathways work, that's the first, most crucial step to making your own voice heard.
And that really brings us to our final question. And this one isn't just about Denver. It's for you in your community. Now that you can see the machinery, you can see the history, the money, the rules of the game, it's worth asking, who's at the controls where you live? And who gets to decide what your neighborhood becomes?